Hi, my name is John Hastings. This is Movie Thoughts. This is the 22nd episode. It's a little bit different. One, I'm trying to do a video part of the podcast as well as the actual podcast. We'll see how that goes. I had been doing weekly episodes, but that's since the since the last couple of weeks I've been kind of busy dealing with different issues due to my day job, reacting to the coronavirus and trying to figure out the best ways that we can continue to deliver kind of psychiatric and mental health care to folks. So I've been a little busy with that as well as taking care of my family. So I've fallen behind on doing this podcast. Having said that, I wanted to try to get an episode in. As always, we've got a Facebook fan page at Movie Thoughts Podcast, and you can follow my letterbox reviews at that site under the username Forager23. As I said, this is the 22nd episode. So just to do a quick episode, this is kind of one I threw together pretty quickly, and it's just going to recommend a couple recent movies I saw that you can still catch on streaming. One is they're going to be on streaming for a while, I would guess, and the other is going to be leaving in a week or so, but I thought I'd talk about those. And they're a little bit different, but I thought I'd kind of had some interesting things to say about them. That doesn't really go together, so this is kind of a split personality episode. So the first movie I want to talk about is a movie I really thought was terrific. It's the new Netflix movie, or the Netflix movie from last year by Michael Bay, Six Underground. You know, Michael Bay is one of the biggest targets for kind of getting beat up on in people, from people who talk about movies today. I think he's essentially a convenient political target. He is easily seen as like not one of us, if kind of we're talking about us being kind of people who are kind of intellectual, brainy movie buffs, or would like to be, or like to see themselves as that. He's a really easy target. And he and his movies are just an easy target that we can all kind of agree are these terrible things we should all beat up on. And it seems like it's been already decided. So even people who will have good things to say about really mediocre and terrible Marvel movies, they all agree that Michael Bay's movies are really bad. I like to kind of often compare him to Guillermo del Toro, or Guillermo del Toro. Pronouncing his name wrong. But Del Toro is definitely like one of us. He seems like a really nice guy. He loves old movies. He loves the same type of movies we do. He makes these very personal movies. Even when he's working on a big budget, you can see he has a really personal investment in it. He seems really nice. He's this kind of nice humanist guy. And then Michael Bay is very much not one of us. He seems like a huge D-bag. His movies are super materialistic. They're all about consumption. They have probably terrible values. And he's making these movies about toys. Don't seem very personal. Yet I think, if you compare them as filmmakers, Bay is about 1,000 times better filmmaker than Del Toro. He's just a dynamic filmmaker. He's thinking in terms of images and telling story through pictures and sound. Del Toro, I think, has a great design sense, but I think he has very little narrative sense. His stories are flat. They're very one note. They kind of hit you over the head and put you to sleep at the same time. It's kind of an impressive combination in one sense. Part of the problem, again, defending Michael Bay, is I don't think all his movies are great. I think the first Bad Boys movie is pretty lousy, and Pearl Harbor, I haven't seen it since it came out, but I think it's pretty bad. But on the other hand, you have movies like Pain and Gain, which I think is one of the great movies of the century. It's just this great, dumb comic caper movie, or dumb crime movie, and I think it holds up, or I think you could put it next to some of the Coen brothers movies in that genre, and it kind of holds up with them as being as an important example of that genre as their movies. It has a very kind of William Wellman-like quality to it, that it takes on all these different issues or subjects that are related to the way we live now, but does so in a very offhand way. So Pain and Gain, I think, is great. Six Underground I don't think is that good, but I think it's pretty good. It feels very much, first of all, the work of a young man. It's a very lively movie. It doesn't feel sclerotic at all. It doesn't feel kind of weighed down by someone who's been just doing this too long. It seems really fresh and original and pretty exciting. Definitely more interesting to me than anything that's come from Marvel in terms of the filmmaking and in terms of the action sequences. One thing people I think forget is, there's no one way to do action. So some people will get very hung up on like, well, all action has to be very, that has to really rely on like this geographical fidelity. Like we really need to have a good sense of space, and that's what great action movies kind of really support that, and you know where everyone is at the same time. And there's definitely something to be said for that. And you look at the best, some of the great Jackie Chan action sequences, and that's very clear. Like there's a lot of fast movement of the actors and the performers, but the filmmaking is very clear, like where everyone is, and it relies on your understanding kind of the geography of the setting. But then there's movies more like, you can think of something like the Bourne movies, where that's not as important as putting over an impression of what it feels like to be in the action. They, I think, moves back and forth very quickly between those two things, and also his action sequences really are much more, they are more about the visual rhythm, visual rhyming. I think you are able to understand kind of what's going on, and you get a sense of the tactics, but it is more about it's more along the lines of that impressionistic side than the kind of geographical naturalism. But in this movie, there's an example of a number of really terrific action sequences where you really do can follow along, and there's multiple characters doing different actions, and you don't really lose track of it. There's a great car chase at the beginning that has this really kind of keeps adding to it and adding in different elements. You've got people in different cars, you've got kind of people on foot who are engaged in it too. It has a great kind of a capper to it that is thematically appropriate and kind of unexpected. There's a really terrific sequence in the middle that has all these great kind of really, this is kind of Michael Bay, one of my favorite things he does, these vertiginous like high-rise scenes where, we're dealing with the possibility of falling from great heights, which he's pretty great at. There's a great sequence in Transformers 3, the Transformers Dark of the Moon, that has a similar kind of high-rise sequence like this, but this is along those lines. And then the final sequence, I think, final action sequence is a better superhero fight than I've seen in any Marvel superhero movie, probably full stop, and better than any Marvel superhero movie fight scene. And there's even a kind of a use of a superpower that's very visually inventive and also tactically very cool. So the actual tactics of the superpower plays into how it rolls out, and that's not something you see in the Marvel movies, which tend to be pretty not very thoughtful about those type of issues. So I think it's just kind of a smart movie. It's a visually interesting movie. In terms of the action sequences. Not the plot is maybe not so much. It seems like a little bit like second-rate Shane Black, and has that kind of blend of comedy and sentimentality that rubs some people the wrong way, but I think it's fine. It's not quite as sharp as Shane Black's screenplays are, but it's along those lines. It is a very much in the thematically and attitude-wise very much a 1990s action movie. So that's may also not be everyone's cup of tea, but in terms of the filmmaking, I think it's really aces. And the only problem is that, and one of the reasons I put off watching it so long, is that it wasn't in theaters. I would have loved to have seen it on the big screen, but now that no one can see anything in theaters right now, I thought it was an appropriate movie to watch. So Six Underground, it's on Netflix. I recommend it.